Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm teacher Ahmed Jamul. I'm glad to talk about document 3 of chapter 15, hypothalamus pituitary axis and ovarian secretions. At puberty, the female ovaries start to function by secreting ovarian hormones as estrogen and progesterone. But what stimulates the ovaries to function at this certain age? Why not before and why not later? Experiments carried on female mice in document B of your books allow us to answer this question. I want you to pause this video for a while to interpret the experiments of document B. An adult control female mouse whose pituitary gland is intact shows cyclic activity of her genital system, the ovaries, the uterus, and the vagina. But when the anterior pituitary of this female mouse is removed, the ovaries atrophy or degenerate, and its cyclic activity stops. This indicates that the cyclic activity of the ovaries is stimulated by the pituitary gland. However, when the pituitary is grafted back in the pituitary area, the cyclic activity of the ovaries is restored, which indicates that the pituitary control of the ovarian cycle is done via blood. So, the ovarian activity is not autonomous. It is controlled by the pituitary gland. But you must be asking, why should the graft occur in the pituitary area for the pituitary to function normally? So, is the function of the pituitary dependent on its location? To answer this, let's have a close look at the pituitary. The pituitary gland is a small gland located at the base of the brain. It consists of two parts, a posterior part and an anterior part. Just above the pituitary lies a region of the brain called the hypothalamus. The pituitary gland and the hypothalamus are connected through the pituitary duct as shown in document A of your books. The pituitary duct has blood vessels in it. This blood is found to be rich with a hormone called GnRH. The hypothalamus along with the pituitary are called the hypothalamo-pituitary axis. In response to GnRH, the anterior pituitary secretes the GnSH, including FSH and LH hormones. In this document, you will study the relation between the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary gland, as well as the role of the hormone GnRH. Then, you will study the role of the pituitary in controlling the ovarian cycle and get to know more about the hormones released by the pituitary gland for this purpose. To prove the relation between the hypothalamus and the pituitary, let's start with the first series of experiments. When the neurons of the hypothalamus are destroyed, the anterior pituitary stops secreting the hormones FSH and LH, whereas the stimulation of those neurons causes an increase in the secretion of pituitary hormones. What significance can you make from these experiments? Well, I think your answer will be that the neurons of the hypothalamus stimulate pituitary secretions. But when the pituitary duct is sectioned to disconnect the hypothalamus from the pituitary secretions stop as well. What additional significance does this experiment provide? Do you agree that this indicates that the communication between hypothalamus and pituitary is dependent on this duct and occurs strictly through it? Now, as we said before, blood taken from the vessels within the pituitary duct is found to be rich with the hormone GnRH, which suggests that the hormone is responsible for the stimulation of the pituitary gland. So as a conclusion, hypothalamus secretes GnRH into blood, transported only through the pituitary duct to stimulate pituitary secretions FSH and LH. Another series of experiments confirm the conclusion you made from the first series of experiments. Kindly pause the video to interpret the experiment whose results are shown in document E of your books. In a female monkey, the amount of LH fluctuates around 35 microgram per liter, but suddenly, after a lesion of its hypothalamus, the level of LH sharply decreases in 2 days to become approximately null. The same happens for the level of FSH. In this female monkey, it sharply decreases from around 350 microgram per liter before the lesion to reach approximately null after 6 days of the lesion. This confirms the fact that hypothalamus is responsible for stimulating pituitary secretions. But the rest of this experiment will reveal how is GnRH secreted by the hypothalamus. Document F of your books shows the variations in the level of LH in green as well as the variations in the level of FSH in orange in a female monkey whose hypothalamus is destroyed. This female is receiving 2 modes of GnRH injections, discontinuous or pulsatile injections and continuous injections. You can easily notice that upon the discontinuous injections of GnRH, the level of FSH sharply increases till around 100 nanogram per milliliter, and that of LH also increases till around 15 nanogram per milliliter. While when the GnRH injections are continuous, both levels of LH and FSH fluctuate around very low values. So, which kind of GnRH injections might be stimulating the pituitary secretion? You might say it's obvious that not any GnRH secretion by the hypothalamus can stimulate the secretion of pituitary hormones, but GnRH secretions should be discontinuous for this stimulation to occur. But what are these hormones and what do these acronyms stand for and how are they related to the ovarian cycle? FSH stands for the follicular stimulating hormone as suggested by its name. This hormone stimulates the growth and maturation of the follicles within the ovaries. LH stands for the luteinizing hormone. This hormone also stimulates the growth and maturation of the follicles within the ovaries, but mainly is responsible for the rupture of the graphene follicle and its transformation into luteal body. The secretion of both pituitary hormones FSH and LH is stimulated by GnRH secreted by the hypothalamus. GnRH is called gonadotropin releasing hormone since it causes the release of pituitary hormones. Since both pituitary hormones FSH and LH stimulate their target cells in the female gonads, they are both called gonadotropin stimulating hormones. And so, the hypothalamus and the pituitary together make the control center in the brain. Hypothalamus stimulates the anterior pituitary by pulsatile secretions of GnRH. In turn, the pituitary gland secretes FSH and LH whose target organ is the ovary. In response to variable amounts of FSH and LH, the amounts of estrogen and progesterone secreted by the ovary change too. Document C of your books shows the synchronized evolution of pituitary and ovarian hormones. The follicle-stimulating hormone FSH stimulates the maturation of cavitary follicles during follicular phase. As follicles grow bigger, they secrete a bigger amount of estrogen. LH, on the other hand, triggers ovulation due to its peak of secretion at the end of the follicular phase. This rupture of the graphene follicle causes a decrease in the amount of estrogen. But then LH also stimulates transformation of the ruptured follicle to its corpus luteum, which secretes both estrogen and progesterone, and that's why their level increases in the luteal phase until the corpus luteum degenerates.